I like beer.
Hey everyone, if you like the Roast West Coast Coffee podcast, you might also appreciate the I Like Beer the podcast. Listening to these guys is like being a fly on the wall of the pub with a few of your favorite mates having a pint. These professional beer appreciators have plenty of stories to share on everything from the mating habits of penguins to their behind-the-scenes brewery experiences. Check out the I Like Beer the podcast wherever you are listening to this show about coffee, or head to ilikebeerthepodcast.com. Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Season 4, Episode 11 of the Roast West Coast Coffee Podcast. I'm Ryan Wolt, and on every other episode of this show, we try to get a little bit coffee smarter. Siri Simran Khalsa, the Executive Director of Coffee at Lofty Coffee Company, returns today to follow up on last week's Developing Flavor Talk to talk about how she tastes coffee, in particular when going through the sampling and roast profiling stages. We also talk about how tasting involves our other senses, and how sometimes it can get a little bit silly. There is some overlap with previous episodes where we've covered coffee cupping, but we definitely delve into some new ground. Today, again, I'm drinking a Lofty Coffee Morning Dove blend. It was the batch brew they were offering at Lofty Coffee Roasting Works when I popped in last week. I made this one as a V60 pour-over using a paper filter and a ratio of 15 grams of water to 1 gram of coffee grind. I usually brew about 22 to 25 grams of coffee every morning, and I end up with almost the exact amount of coffee to fill my favorite coffee mug. With tasting notes of caramel, sweet lemon, and cocoa, this is an easy drinking coffee. And mine is good. It's not as good as the one I had at the shop, but I'm still enjoying the hell out of it anyway. I'm not sure if we've ever specifically noted it, but batch brews are filtered coffees made in larger quantities, or batches, that most coffee shops will offer you if you walk in and say, "I'd like a coffee, please." Batch brews are commonly made with some sort of coffee machine, but the term, while not entirely accurate, is sometimes used to indicate any coffee made in quantity so long as it is ready for you when you walk in the door, even if that coffee was made as an oversized pour-over. Drip coffees, in which hot water is dripped over ground coffee either in a machine or as a pour-over, is another term used for the house batch brew. Whatever you're drinking today, I hope you have enough of it to last you about 30 minutes, because it is time for us to get coffee smarter on the Roast West Coast Coffee Podcast with Siri Simran Khalsa, the Executive Director of Coffee at Lofty Coffee Company. Welcome back to the Roast West Coast Coffee Podcast, Siri. My brain still hurts from our last conversation, so hopefully we can cover something that maybe makes more sense to me today, and I'm glad you're back.
Thank you for having me.
I saw you have a dog over there. What's your dog's name?
My dog's name is Pablo. He is a sweet lab mutt brindle baby. I'm actually very happy. I recently rescued a cat, and right as I set up my computer and like everything, she was being not friendly, and she was like trying to she hates my computer. She was like trying to close it, and she's like running around, and I was like, you better not be disturbing our podcast recording. But I think she got the message, because I have no idea where she is now.
We're actually fostering a lab mutt right now named Mick, who's part of a military program called PACT, where you foster dogs for people who are on deployment or pets.
Oh, cool.
And then you know that there's an end date. They're coming back. They're taking this pet back. But this is our first time doing it. And so far, it's been a lot of fun, but it was a lot of learning too, because we've never had a 70-pound dog in our apartment before.
Yeah.
And that's definitely different from the terrier that we used to have, who was like 19 pounds. And he also likes to join the podcast. So today my wife is home. We're chatting on the weekend. And so she's taking him for a walk or something right now. But on other shows, like, he wants to be where I am so badly that he will keep bumping his head into the door to this little room that I'm in until I finally let him stick his nose in.
Just let him in. Yeah. Yeah. Pablo's lying next to me right now. He's like, I guess I'll hang out.
That's good. It's nice to have a dog around. It's been 2 years since we did, but I forgot how much work it is too.
Yeah, it's so worth it though. He's my best friend. Yeah, he's 5 now and he's just the best. He makes it pretty easy, but I think I've lucked out with that.
Then my question would be, is there ever a chance that Pablo will get a coffee named after him at Lofty Coffee?
That'd be sweet. You know what though, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying it. It would probably be Buddha, who's the founder of Lofty. His dog. They recently had to put him down,
Oh, I'm
and
sorry to hear
so I
that.
think there would be a Buddha coffee before a Pablo coffee, which is totally fine. He was the sweetest boy.
There was a time where we allowed dogs in restaurants and bars kind of regularly, and having like the shop dog was always like a cool thing. I don't think that's allowed anymore for health code stuff. Like,
It's not. I know, and that it's funny because Eric will always be like, "Yeah, bring Pablo to work." And I'm like, he's gonna have to sit on the cold patio in the cement. Like he'd much rather be sleeping in my bed. Like he does not want to come to work with me. As badly as I'd love him to come to work. It's one thing if he could be in the roastery, but like just having to be outside, that's no fun.
it's fun for me to be outside, but yeah, I get what you're saying. Last week we talked a lot about what you've learned about coffee from roasting and how you develop flavor specifically in the process. And one of the things that I took away from that was how much tasting you're doing along the way. You're pulling beans out regularly at different times. You're tasting them all and comparing them to each other to find like the ideal roast profile that you want to make. I'm hoping you can take us through the next step of that, which is how you taste coffee. I've been told slurping is important. I'm hoping you can explain why that is. My natural instinct when I taste anything that I'm trying to taste is to close my eyes. I don't know if that actually helps or not, but for some reason it feels like I'm shutting off a sense. So, my question this week for you is, since I try to make them super complicated and overly long, is if you could just walk us through how you taste coffee when you're doing it, both during that roasting profiling process and then also afterwards to make sure that you've gotten what you want.
Yeah. I love this question again because I think like as a roaster, I actually spend more time tasting coffee than roasting coffee, which is good because like, you're trying to, create a beverage that people are going to drink, and so you better be tasting it to make sure it tastes the way you want it to. So to walk you through cupping, are you familiar with cupping? Like how, like why you set it up the way that you do, or how it's set up?
Yes, we did have an episode on the show about cupping, which I'll send people to, but maybe we can just do a real quick recap. How about I just say, and you can tell me if
Sure.
I'm wrong, is essentially
Yeah.
you're grinding up a bunch of different samples pulled from the roaster, or sample coffees you're thinking about purchasing, and you're putting them in these little like soup bowls, the grounds, and covering them with hot water so there's a bloom, and then using a spoon to push like the grinds that float to the top out of the way, and tasting some of that coffee to see how they compare to each other. Is that roughly?
Yeah, I think you've hit it like the nail on the head with that one where that's exactly what you're doing. I think a question I get sometimes is why we do it this way, and it's allows us to taste a lot of different samples or a lot of different coffees all at once, without, I mean, what if you had 15 samples to do and you're making 15 little pour overs? It also minimizes like any sort of brewing variance, or any bias that might come in with other brew methods. So it just it's the same amount of coffee, the same grind size, the same amount of water. So it just is you're really just tasting the coffee. So what I'll do is exactly that. We'll set up a cupping, and when I'm sampling a new sample, I'll use what is known as like this SCA cupping sheet, and then I will use a similar system when I'm doing my normal just production cuppings. I usually don't use this SCA sheet for every single production cupping. It's kind of excessive, but for a new coffee, and how this is how I'll do it. And how it's set up is you're evaluating all the sensory qualities of the coffee. So the first being, as you mentioned, it kind of has this bloom, and there's what we call the crust. And the first, and actually, I'm going to step back. When I'm evaluating a coffee, I'm going to first evaluate the dry fragrance of the coffee beans. So I'll maybe take a sniff or a smell of the dry ground beans and take note of how that is. And then we'll pour the water. We'll let it sit for a few minutes, and then we will break the crust again using that spoon where we will gently push those grinds back and then smell that wet aroma of the coffee. And it's kind of cool to see sometimes that dry aroma translates to the wet, but sometimes, you might get like chocolatey, darker qualities, but then when you add the water, sometimes maybe like the brighter qualities will come out. And sometimes not. Or sometimes there'll be more intensity to the wet aroma.
I was going to say those two senses are so connected, the smelling and the tasting. And when you taste something that doesn't taste the way it smells, which is like when you break that sentence down, doesn't make actually sense, but it really will throw your brain. You'll be like, oh, something's wrong, even when it's really not. Yeah. It's just those two things, maybe the things that you smell first don't line up. And I'm sure there's all kinds of reasons for that, but everyone is different. I wanted to say, based on what you were saying just a minute ago, how much tasting you do as opposed to roasting. Sometimes it feels like it almost, and this is I'm going on a real big tangent here, everyone, so I apologize. We'll get back to the topic at hand. But if you were to hire someone to replace you, for example, is it more important that they can do they have the roasting experience, or that they can naturally understand how the tasting process works? Like, it almost feels like, based on that thing you said, and maybe we just let this sit out there to think about, but it almost feels like if you are naturally a good taster, or you have been able to train your palate, that might be more important. Maybe not more, but as important as actually being able to run through the software and the roasting programs and understand that process, the mechanical side of it.
If I'm being honest, I feel like operating a roaster might actually be easier than tasting.
Yeah.
They're both learnable skills, but I think, to just touch on this question and then we can get back to it, is, at least in my incident, like, we have Brandon, who's our junior production roaster. And if someone was like literally replacing my job, where he's, building the skill to be a great roaster operator, where maybe then that other person is like more qualified in tasting coffee. So it definitely goes hand in hand. And I think they're both learnable skills, but they both have to be, maybe there's a balance there that is needed.
You can't have one without the other. Mm-hmm. I'm going to look into that a little bit more. We'll touch on that again someday in the future.
Yeah, we can take note and have, again, I think it's a great topic, because like, it's kind of like, if you're tasting, the next skill is then also be able to identify what is going on in the roast that is making this coffee taste this way.
Mm-hmm. It's almost the art versus the science, or the art versus the technical skill of it, and taste it's like color. Like, we can all agree that this thing is blue, but whether or not we're seeing the same blue depends on, the person. And it's a whole, we're going to break some brains if we go too far down that rabbit hole.
Well, also, it's funny you say that, because we're getting to talk about taste, and sometimes when I taste a coffee, I'll just like, a color will just come to mind. It's not like a flavor, but like, I'll be like, this tastes yellow. Like, and I don't know if that's just how my brain works. And obviously that does not translate for everyone, but that's a very common thing. If you're looking at my notes, that you'll just see colors written places, because sometimes that's just how it is.
Yeah, but that makes sense to me, because I'll think that about flavors of things, because we do eat a lot of things that maybe don't directly, they're not real foods. Like, I'm thinking about like a popsicle or something. Like, this tastes like red.
Yeah.
But I know what that means, and I think other people know what it means, because we're associating colors with foods that we have eaten. And for you doing tastings, you're pulling tasting notes from other things that we've experienced. So when we say this tastes, like, if you said this tastes like blue, I would probably naturally think of blueberries, which is a common tasting note, sure. Right? So that makes sense to me. So I think where we need to get back to is, you're going to walk us through how you taste coffee once we've set up our cupping, or we've set up our grinds to taste.
Yeah, so at this point, we've already evaluated the aroma and the fragrance of the coffee. And so now we're going to taste the coffee. Typically, I'll let it cool down a little bit because, first of all, you don't want to burn your tongue, but also I think a lot of the more nuanced flavors of the coffee come out as it cools. Also, sometimes when it's hot, it might just taste good, but then as it cools, maybe off tastes will come out. So making sure the coffee, you're tasting it as it cools and that the coffee still has great qualities as it cools. But the first thing that I know, and this was in your questions, is as we're tasting, we slurp. And we do this to spread the coffee across our entire palate and to also allow some air in there so that we're really tasting the coffee kind of across our palate. So we're getting all the qualities of our coffee, tasting all the different areas of our taste buds versus, and I was like, if I'm cupping with someone new, I was like, imagine a cup of coffee and you just sip it and it kind of rolls across your palate. Maybe you get some acidity in the front and maybe there's like this lingering quality on the sides of your tongue, where when you slurp it, it's all going across your tongue all at once. So you're really being able to like identify those qualities more quickly.
This was one of the hardest things for me to do when I first did like my first cuppings, because I feel like in my brain I've been trained for so long it's impolite to slurp, and so I just like, it was so hard for me. I had to really focus on this idea that I was gonna and slurp. That was probably, sorry for anyone listening if that sounded gross. I was trying to slurp without having anything to slurp for the second. But yeah, there is like this mental thing of, it took me several tries to get to a point where I didn't think about the slurp as much as I thought about the flavors coming into my mouth. So I only say that
Yeah.
so anyone starting this process for the first time or going to their first cupping, it's like anything that we've talked about. There's practice involved.
Yeah. And when I'm cupping with new people, there's always a lot of giggles going around of like people slurping and they're just laughing about it because it's very silly. It's honestly very silly, but yeah, definitely like some like of the most like skilled cuppers, like they can like, as they slurp, you hear these like crazy whistles and whatnot, but simply it's to just spread that coffee and flavor across your whole palate as well, allow air in so that you're really tasting all the nuances of the coffee. But then to get more into the tasting part, usually I'll take my first round will just be like an overall impression of the coffee. Kind of take note of like, what are the first things that come up? And then maybe I'll do a few more rounds and I'll get more down into the specifics. As I said, I'm using the cupping sheet that's provided by SCA. And there's different categories of the first. When it comes to tasting is going to be flavor and aftertaste. So that first time, I'll really like pinpoint what are the flavors that I'm getting and how is the overall aftertaste of this coffee. And then from there, the next kind of part of the sheet is going to be acidity. And so from there, you want to evaluate the quality of the acidity, the intensity. Are there any? I also use acidity to help identify flavors where it's like, okay, I'm having this like more acidic flavor. Maybe it tastes like lemon, and that'll help me identify flavors as well. And then the next part on that sheet is going to be body. So similar, it's not a specific flavor, but it's going to be how is the quality and intensity of the body. And then the last in the specifics here is going to be sweetness. That's another great quality to also help identify flavor. So maybe you're tasting a sip of a coffee and you have some sweetness. Maybe that I can identify that sweetness as caramel or brown sugar, and that'll help me, identify what that flavor is. And then this is not on the cupping sheet, but this is something also when like brewing coffee, I try to identify is in most coffees, if they're roasted well, you're going to have some sweetness, you're going to have some acidity, you're going to have maybe some bitter, positively bitter qualities or maybe negative. But I try to sort of identify those three things. So maybe I'm pulling an espresso and the sweetness is caramel, and the acidity is cherry, and the bitterness is like a dark chocolate. And so to me, that's like using those qualities to help identify what flavors are, and helping us break down in like these little sections of like how to identify certain flavors in a coffee using these categories.
Do you have like a new coffee at Lofty that maybe you can kind of recall and say like these were some of the initial notes, and then did those notes like follow up later on as you were going through the process? Like I'm trying to think about like
Mm-hmm.
preconceived notions of like, if I smell these things, do I naturally start looking for those things as I go through the process? Is that an issue that you train yourself on?
So I definitely have found that it's something that I look for is like sometimes I'll smell things in a coffee and then I'm more curious, is that smell going to refer or transfer to flavor? And sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't. We have like this great tool that's like it identifies specific aromas and smells in coffee, both in like the caramelization, in like distilled. I'm butchering the name, so I don't want to try to, in my mind, tell you exactly what it is. But the chart is a little different than the like flavor wheel, for example. And so I do try to kind of be critical on how I'm evaluating the aroma and vice versa to like the flavor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know that I feel really kind of dumb right now, but I don't know that I thought I don't even know if I knew there was like a coffee aromas chart. Like we talk about flavor wheel a lot.
I'm gonna find it right now because so so here it is. It's the Linez du Café, and this is like a really awesome training tool that I've been so fortunate to be able to use. And essentially, what it is, Linez du Café, they actually originally made this aroma training kit for wine, and then they made one for coffee. I'm actually going to send you the link right now. And this kit, it has like distilled, like concentrated alcohol, like examples of what these aromas are. And so this kit is used for training, but they also have a really beautiful chart that has all the aromas, and it's like really beautifully made, where it has like color, it uses color and all these other things into like showing what these aromas are.
I really do love this about coffee, that there are so many overlaps between the science and our inability to explain science in words. And so we use senses to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
And recently I was sent some coffee beans unsolicited that just said blind tasting on them, and was kind of challenged to do that. And that's not something I do a lot. I'm not a roaster, I'm not working in a roastery, but I did. And the first go around, I really couldn't focus on any of the flavors. It was just kind of all coffee flavor. And
Mm-hmm.
the second time, I made a point to really sit down, and I turned off the podcast. I wasn't listening to my own podcast, just so let's make that clear. It was someone else's. And I actually turned on some music and just kind of had it on the background, and like sat with and I mentioned this earlier, I sat with my eyes closed and just kind of focused on what I was doing. And I was able to pull out some flavors. And then thankfully, like when I sent them to the roaster, he confirmed that that's what was in there. And I was very proud of myself. And even though I'm not in practice, it wasn't, it was something I was able to do based on what little experience I have. And also really just paying attention and using all those senses and trying to focus. And so I think there is like a very low, I don't want to say barrier to entry, but I think anyone who wants to take a few minutes with their cup of coffee in the morning can get something out of it because of these tools that we have. And
Totally.
taking it to that next level is where we really start, like where a roaster like you starts getting into the science and the history and the repetition and the comparison. But for someone who's just listening to the show that really likes coffee in the morning, you can really enhance that experience by finding a few tools like a flavor wheel or this aroma wheel, which I'll find and try to link to.
Yeah, I'll send you this image, and I can also even talk to them a little bit because I use it every day. I just was like brain farting on the name, but there's kind of different categories, and so one of them being the sugar browning, and these are all aromas that come out in the roasting process. So the sugar browning, these aromas could be like dark chocolate, toast, nutty, butter, caramel. And we have aromatic taints. So these could be like negative or not negative, but just like taint qualities that could be happening in the roast. Like you get like rubber aroma or smoke or what do we have here? We said straw. That's like a common one. If it's like underdeveloped, you'll maybe smell like hay or something like that. Leather. And then in the dry distillation aroma, you'll find things like cocoa like cedar, malt. Malt is a common aroma I find in some coffees. Like currant, which is like a type of berry, maple syrup, pepper, and then we have our enzymatic aromas like honey, apricot, green peas, apple, lemon. And so it's again, this tool is really cool. I'm also just outside of coffee, I love like smells. So it's just a cool thing to get into. And these are all things that are coming out through the roasting process, because these green beans don't have these aromas, but as we roast it, we're uncovering those aromatic qualities.
I think what I'm taking from the show today is that when we are tasting, it's not just one sense that we're using. We're using all of these different senses.
Yeah, and so something you had said earlier on that I think you mentioned feeling a little silly for, but I actually think is real, is closing your eyes. I partook in this interesting coffee conference. I think it was like early in the pandemic, so it was all virtual, but I'm forgetting this person's name, but they did this like it was like a 15-minute little part in the like presentation where it was like they walked us through how to taste a raisin or like a blueberry or something, where it was like sit there, hold the raisin, feel the raisin in your hand, like, and like smell it, touch it, like, and like close your eyes, put it in your mouth, but don't bite on it, like feel it in your mouth. It was like it was almost like this meditation of being extremely present. And I find with cupping, that's something that, to be honest, is extremely challenging in my work environment because like we don't have like a dedicated like enclosed cupping lab, which I wish we did. So there's a lot going around me, and oftentimes I'll have my like noise canceling headphones and I'll put on like white noise or like frequencies or something to kind of like block out the sound. And it's really like this practice in being in like incredibly present with what you are doing and what you're smelling and what you're tasting. And I think that's something outside of coffee. I love food and beverage. And I think like eating and drinking is like this moment where you're like focused on like a sensory experience ultimately. And I think those senses go outside of just smell and taste and can be like, again, like full body, a full body experience.
I tried to lead you there earlier to plug something from Lofty, but you didn't take the bait because you're always avoiding that.
Oh,
So tell me, I know you guys are always doing new stuff. You're going through this process at Lofty. Are there any new coffees that you guys are excited about or that are in the works or that people can kind of look to that's something new for them?
yeah, absolutely. So actually, I'm very excited. I don't know if we talked much about this, but I'm sure you're aware of it, that the supply chain has been very interesting over the last couple of years. And so there's some things that have been like, we've been waiting for, and just like getting the right packaging and then getting the coffee to arrive and getting everything to line up has been challenging. But we're looking into March. We're having a full lineup of new coffees, and a goal of ours has been to offer more. For the most part, we'll have a Guatemala, we'll have an Ethiopia, maybe we'll have one other, but this is going to be our most extensive single origin offering I think we've ever had. And I am so excited. We have this delicious classic Guatemalan geisha that was supposed to be a holiday release that again because of
It'll be
some supply chain.
St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah. Well, I was like, people are going to want a geisha whether it's the holidays or not. So it's like classic tea-like jasmine, star anise, bergamot, delicious Guatemalan geisha.
What is bergamot? I don't know that name or that flavor.
Bergamot is a citrus. Are you familiar with Earl Grey tea? So the flavor of Earl Grey is bergamot. Like that like sweet kind of citrusy floral quality of Earl Grey is bergamot.
Just as a reference, I didn't drink Earl Grey tea for a long time, and I do drink quite a bit of tea, but I think I avoided it because I assumed it would be bland because of the name Grey, and that is what we're talking about. We're talking about tasting colors.
Oh, it's so
but it's
good.
not. It's so fantastic, and now we always have it in the house.
So tasty.
But there you go. My association with the color and the flavor and everything kind of came together there. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
No worries.
The St. Patrick's Day geisha.
The St. Patrick's Day geisha. And then this is actually our very first direct relationship coffee that we have every single year. It's called the Genesis Lot from a producer in Frijones, Guatemala. It's a family-run farm by the Prentice family, and it's called Finca de Dios. And this, again, back in like 2014 was the very first, like, we are buying specifically from this farmer. We know exactly how much money is going to this farmer for each pound. And we've been getting it ever since then. So it's a classic washed Guatemalan with really nice, like, stone fruit, nectarine qualities, like a really nice balanced acidity, caramel, chocolate, maybe a little bit of citrus in there. But it's like an all-around favorite of Lofty goers, as we have it year in and out. So that's going to be there. And then this last year, we've always had a natural Ethiopian on our menu. Anytime we've ever tried to like do a different single origin espresso, it's like never as successful. So all year we have a natural Ethiopian as a pour over and as a single origin espresso. And we're bringing back a fan favorite it's a Ethiopian coffee from the town of Chantuini, which is, there's a particular washing station there that it is incredible. It's what you want in a natural Ethiopian. It's a berry bomb, but it's got like a really nice body and this like nice dark chocolate quality. Very fragrant and aromatic. So it's like whenever anyone orders one, it's like the whole cafe just like fills up with like amazing aromas. But something this year I've been wanting to do is, even though it won't be on single origin, is to also have a washed Ethiopian. And we have from the same region of Sidamo, this just really amazingly clean washed Ethiopian. To me, it's got this like nice floral citrus with a little bit of blackberry and a nice like light body. And then, as I said, it's an extensive new single origin menu. We have a few more coffees. Well, and these two I'm really excited about because one of them, we've never done a single origin from this region. And then also these two coffees. So one of them is from Peru and then the other is from Papua New Guinea. And for both of these coffees, Brandon, who's been the junior production roaster at Lofty for about 6 months now, maybe a little more than 6 months, I really brought him into the process of deciding which coffees we were going to buy, where we got a handful of samples from Peru and a handful of samples from Papua New Guinea, and we each chose one that we loved, and then we bought both of those coffees. So that was a cool experience as like a trainer and leader in my building and my team, to be able to bring him in to be a part of that process. Because I will say he's actually got a really, really good palate, and every time we cup, we're really calibrated, and he always has great feedback and notes. And so again, to bring someone who's like new into roasting into that process, I can only I can only learn from it and he can only learn from it. So those are two new coffees that I'm excited to have.
You just said something super interesting to me, was that you're calibrated, like your tastings together. Like that's a whole nother level of roasting I never really thought about. Like a lot of roasters are roast on their own, or they have people that assist them, but like they're the final one. And you're actually taking both of your flavors and comparing them and finding coffees that work. It's just like another level of not difficulty, just like nuance.
Yeah, and I mean, my hopes is that by doing that, like it also gives him more ownership in what we're doing, and it's not just like, this is what I said and this is my profile and you better roast it perfect. It's like, oh no, like I tasted this coffee and it tastes great, and like I'm now can't wait for it to come in because I had a hand and a say in like making that decision, and we're gonna like, you know, roast the coffee the best we can.
I think
We're gonna do it.
roasting coffee the best you can is a great way to end today. Thank you for coming back to the show, and I'm excited to figure out what it is we're going to talk about next time.
Thank you so much. This was a really fun conversation.
To recap from today, the checklist to follow when tasting coffee, really tasting, like for a cupping or if you're getting into roasting, goes as follows. First, smell the dry beans, trying to pick out any unique aromas. Second, pour hot water over the coffee grinds. A little bit of crust will form. Third, break that crust using a spoon to push back the grinds. There are specific spoons for this, but any soup spoon will do. Fourth, smell the wet aroma. Get your nose way down, just hovering over the coffee, and breathe it in deep. Fifth, slurp the coffee to spread it across your entire palate, across your entire tongue. This will let in some air and spread out the flavors across all of your taste buds. Siri also suggested tasting as the coffee cools to avoid burning your tongue and to better identify subtle, nuanced flavors or off flavors that you may not be able to process when the coffee is too hot. And while you're tasting, you're looking for more than just one thing. There's the initial flavor and then any aftertastes. Then you'll be considering the acidity, body, sweetness, and bitterness of the coffee. These are qualities that you can focus on, one at a time, to help you identify what flavors you might find. The first time I did a coffee cupping, the most common flavor I thought I could taste was dirt. No joke. Every coffee tasted the same. But I had a good teacher who pushed me to go further. Would I describe the dirt taste as earthy, like soil, or bitter, like really, really dark chocolate? Could I taste any sweetness at all? If so, was it sweet like brown sugar or sweet like a berry? With practice and the realization that I could break down my tasting into categories, I got better. Of course, it helps to have a coffee flavor wheel handy, and I'm looking forward to getting an aroma chart to refer to the next time I taste as well. I'll link to some examples of both flavor and aroma charts that you can reference on roastwestcoast.com. If you've already subscribed to the newsletter, it'll show up in your email inbox later today. If not, what are you waiting for? You'll get every episode of this coffee podcast, along with more coffee content, sent to you every week. In the newsletter, I'll also include some information on tasting colors. Some claim that ability is a form of synesthesia. I think I pronounced that right. Which is a, quote, perceptual phenomenon in which stimulation of one sensory or cognitive pathway leads to an involuntary experience in a second sensory or cognitive pathway. Basically, one sensory experience is filtered through another one. There are also researchers who study how color impacts our perception of flavor and how we can create associations between color and taste. For example, if you were given the same coffee that had been tinted in 3 different colors using a tasteless food coloring, would you still perceive the coffees to taste the same, or would they taste differently to you? Thanks again to Siri for spending some time with us. That's time that she's not spending at the roastery, or time she's not spending paying attention to her dog Pablo. If Pablo is anything like the foster dog staying with me, he's supervising this entire podcast operation on her side of things. That foster program I mentioned during the show is pactforanimals.org. PACT spelled P-A-C-T. I'll link to it in the newsletter. It's a great program in which temporary fosters take on pets when their owners are deployed by the military or have a temporary need for a hospital stay. It feels like we're providing a service to a pet owner who can't wait to be reunited with their companion, while at the same time, I get to hang out with this cool dog who loves to nap in the sun while I drink my morning cup of coffee. If you are interested in being a foster, check out packedforanimals.org, and while you're online, check out this show's industry partners, including Ignite Coffee Roasters, Café La Terre, Mostra Coffee Company, Coffee Cycle Roasting, Leap Coffee, Zumbar Coffee and Tea, Maria Coffee, Steady State Coffee Roasting, Camp Coffee Company, First Light Whiskey, and Cape Horn Coffee Importers. If you want to find links to those top-notch companies, head to roastwestcoast.com. And if you have questions about coffee, send them to me on Instagram at roastwestcoast, and they might just end up on a future Coffee Smarter episode. Or you can come ask me those questions at Zumbar Coffee and Tea in Cardiff, California. I'll be there Friday, March 11th from 9 to 11 a.m. I'm not a coffee expert, and I'm generally the person asking the questions, but I'll do my best, and, worst case, we can share a moment over a good cup of coffee. Thank you for listening, everyone. This episode of the Roast West Coast Coffee Podcast has been written, produced, and recorded by me, Ryan Wolt. I hope this show has found you happy, healthy, and with at least enough sanity to make it through the day. And please, always tip your baristas, now more than ever, and be sure to drink good coffee. Hey there, if you liked this Coffee Smarter episode, and you want more and more and more coffee content, please consider buying us a cup of coffee or signing up for a paid subscription to the Roast West Coast newsletter. That would be awesome, and with enough subscribers, we'll be able to focus on creating coffee content for you all day, every day. Subscriptions are a great way to show appreciation for this show. Just head to roastwestcoast.com to subscribe or leave a tip. Thank you so much.